Well, good day everybody. Welcome back to the channel. Well, today we're going to demonstrate a little idea that I came up with in my sketch journal a few days ago. As you might know, I recently became the proud owner of a 3D printer, and that also means that I'm thinking more about maybe typewriter related projects that we can do on a 3D printer. And one of the ideas that struck me was I have 3 Hermes 3000 typewriters, and the oldest one, in terms of the oldest body style, this one, is missing the entire red ribbon margin indicator that runs through the paper bale. And I decided maybe I can 3D print a kind of a crude, simple margin indicator, an adjustable margin indicator out of PLA filament. So that's what I'm going to show you today. Stay tuned. H3K. One of the most distinctive features of the Hermes 3000 typewriter are the red margin indicators. These are a dynamic indicator that runs through the middle of the paper bale, and it's composed of a ribbon system, a loop of ribbon, and the 2 ends of the ribbons here are connected in the paper bale by a very thin spring. And it's a dynamic type of indicator because if you push and hold the margin set, you can actually change the margin and change the indicator as you see here. We can do it also to the right margin as well. So it is a very dynamic and unique margin indicator system. However, it's also one of the most complicated margin systems of any typewriter because of this complicated way in which the red ribbon threads through pulleys and back to the back of the machine, and then the 2 ends of the ribbon are connected here in the bale with a thin, long spring. And as it turns out, one of the Hermes 3000s in my collection is missing the entire ribbon indicator system. The ribbon and the spring is all gone, and so I've thought about maybe trying to rebuild that system, but I also thought there might be an easier solution. Well, because I now have a 3D printer, I decided that maybe I can design some 3D printed plastic margin indicator clips that just attach to the current paper bale. So these were sketches that I made yesterday. I measured the paper bale. It's not rectangular or square. It looks like a truncated circle, so it's sort of rectangular with the curved ends. The top and bottom surfaces of the paper bale are curved. This flat side here is the front of the paper bale where you see that clear indicator strip of the graduations of the line scale. So it measured 6.9 millimeters by 5.54 millimeters on my calipers. And so my original idea was if I could 3D print a little cylindrical piece that has a slot in the back and a little foot sticking off that acts like a margin indicator. My original idea was front view. It would be about, let's say, 5 millimeters wide, and it would have this little indicator coming down. And I originally drew it like this, cross-section view. So here's the circular indicator, and the opening in it is about 5.5 millimeters is what I originally came up with, that would clip over the narrow end of the paper bale. Then you could rotate it into position. And here's this little foot. The paper bale is angled at a 57-degree angle according to my measurements. And also, I had to measure the rubber paper bale rollers. They were 14.15 millimeters in diameter, and I didn't want the diameter of this margin indicator to be anywhere close to that because you don't want the body of this rubbing on the paper. So I went over to my friend Ethan's shop and we started looking at my initial sketches, and he helped me design a replacement indicator using CAD. And really the big design change that we came up with, different from my initial sketch, was instead of putting this indicator in the middle of the piece, we put it on the end, on one of the ends. And the reason why is because as you 3D print it, there won't be any support for this part. The bed of the printer is here. There'd be nothing supporting this foot, and you would have to build furniture out of little strands of filament to support it. So instead we had this indicator foot at the bottom, so it's actually supported on the base of the printer as it prints. So this was my initial part that we printed, and we just happened to have one of his printers was free. It had white filament in it, so we went ahead and printed this first one in white PLA filament. So you can see the cylindrical shape overall. You can see the opening in the cylinder where it clips on through the back of the paper bale. And then the foot itself, that's the indicator. Here you can see it's even with one end of the cylinder. And so the way this would work is it clips onto the back of the bale and it rotates into position like this. The whole trick of this design is the diameter of the opening in here has to be snug on the paper bale itself so that you can move it, but it doesn't move on its own. And you want it so that you can adjust the angle of this and it doesn't fall down on its own. So it has to be kind of snug but still be able to move. As it turns out, this original white part worked fine on this typewriter initially. I was really surprised. So we decided we wanted to make an actual production set of these with red PLA filament because I thought the red would show up really well and it would play nicely with the design of the original red indicator ribbon. So we printed a set of red ones, and as you notice, they are mirror images of each other. So I decided that I wanted the indicator to be on the inside of the bracket itself so that the bracket doesn't interfere with your view of the typing. And so these little indicators just sort of spread here and they bracket the actual work that you're typing between. This margin indicators. Well, we printed these on a different machine that had red filament already in place, and it turns out these actually printed a little bit large. The opening size was a little too loose, and these would just kind of fall on their own. You couldn't keep them in place. So we had to adjust the CAD file to make the dimensions of this a little bit tighter, this inner circular opening. And so we printed another set of these, and here they are on the old Hermes 3000 that is missing the red indicator strip. The red ribbon is completely missing, and the spring is missing, and even the plastic type scale is very cloudy and it's really hard to see through. So the way this works is you set the margin wherever you want it, and you're going to know where your margin is by the position of the print position. And then you move the indicator just one character outboard of that current print position, and this becomes a nice little pointer that tells you where the margin starts. So if you raise a type bar into position here, you can see that my type bar doesn't actually hit the indicator because the indicator is actually showing the area you don't type in, the actual margin itself. Then if we look on the right side, so let's say I set my margin to here on the right side, then I'm simply going to push my indicator to be right here to where I don't hit the indicator. I have the two red indicators now are showing like guidelines between which I actually can type my margin. Now there is one other setup you want to do on this machine with these margin indicators, and that is you have the clear type guides or the card guides. They stick up away from the paper, and so what you don't want to have happen is you don't want to rotate the indicator down to the paper because then it's going to hit the card guide. So what you do is you just rotate these up high enough to where they clear the card guides on both sides like that, and now you're good to go. And they're snug enough to stay in position, and they are smaller in diameter than the paper bale rollers themselves. You don't interfere with the paper, they don't touch it. So these margin indicators are practical, but there is a little bit of an experimental nature to them. And one issue I've come across is if you want to type beyond the right margin. So for instance, if I have this set to where I normally the last character wouldn't actually hit it, but if I want to type beyond the right margin, you'll see that the type slug is actually going to hit the indicator. So there's several things you can do here. One of the things is with the right margin indicator only, you could just rotate it up vertically a little bit more than you would the left one. You just want to make sure that it clears the type slugs like that. You rotate the right one up just a little bit more than the left one, and you won't have any problems with it hitting. You can go ahead and type beyond the right margin, and it still gives you a good indication of where it's at. And also, you have your choice of colors. Now, I couldn't really find seafoam green filament in the stock that Ethan had. There may be some of that online. You might find some kind of light green color that sort of matches the key color of the Hermes 3000, but I really like the red ones. I think they're very attractive, and they do match the red strip on the ribbon, and they kind of remind you of the red margin indicators that originally came on the Hermes 3000. Well, I want to give thanks to Ethan Moses for helping me with the CAD design of these parts. I'm a total newbie to CAD. There will be a link down below in the description to the file so you yourself can make you a set of these if you have access to a 3D printer, or if you have a maker space in your community that can print one for you from the files. Well, in any event, if you have any questions, concerns, or comments, as always, drop them down below. And until next time, stay creative and have yourselves a great day. Bye-bye for now.